Welcome to today's deep dive. We're going to be looking at special education here in the U.S.
All right.
And our guide for this journey is going to be the book, The Complete Guide to Special Education,
Okay.
by Lida Wilm-Schurst and Alan Brew.
All right.
Now, these authors, one is a psychologist and the school psychologist, and the other is a professor, and they've come together to create this resource
Yeah.
that's not just for educators, but for parents and really anyone who wants to better understand
Right.
this whole world of special education. And it's really all about collaboration.
It is. It really is. What's so interesting is this book, you really see the human element of it. You see the perspective of administrators. You see the perspective of teachers, of parents, even students themselves. And you really get a sense of what their goals are, what some of the frustrations they face in navigating this system are.
It's so true. And we're going to be looking at a bunch of different things in our deep dive today.
Okay.
We're going to be unraveling, why we're moving away from terms like mental retardation and adapting intellectual disability.
Okay.
We'll go behind the scenes and see what actually happens during those psychological assessments.
Right.
And we'll even discover how something as simple as the color of the alphabet a child learns with
Wow.
can have a huge difference in their education.
That color example is such a powerful one because it really highlights how individual differences can have such a huge impact on a child's ability to learn.
It is.
So let's kind of start by unpacking those differences and talk about understanding disabilities.
Okay, so, IDEA 2004 identifies 13 different disability categories.
Right.
But for the sake of our deep dive today, we're going to really zoom in on a few key ones.
Okay.
Like autism and ADHD. And I think a lot of people might be surprised by some of the things we're going to talk about.
Absolutely. Take, for example, the prevalence rate of autism.
Okay.
It's gone from affecting 5 in every 10,000 children to a staggering 1 in 110.
Oh, wow.
That's a huge jump.
Huge.
And it raises so many questions about, what's contributing to this increase.
Absolutely.
The book also digs into how sometimes behavioral problems in autistic children can actually mask their true learning potential, which makes accurate diagnosis even more crucial.
That's such a good point. And, it makes me think about how challenging it must be for parents and teachers to really understand what's going on with a child who might be struggling.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces.
Yes, exactly.
And with ADHD, there's this a lesser-known inattentive type that often goes undiagnosed because it looks a lot like laziness or a lack of motivation.
Oh, wow.
So these kids end up falling through the cracks and not getting the support they need.
That's heartbreaking, especially when you consider the potential that these kids have.
It is. It really highlights the importance of understanding these different types of disabilities.
For sure, for sure.
And we also need to be aware of the potential for misdiagnosis, particularly when it comes to conditions like early onset bipolar disorder, which can sometimes present in ways that are very similar to ADHD.
Okay.
The book talks about how crucial accurate assessment is. And that's a great segue into our next topic, the assessment process itself.
Yes, because, this process can feel really mysterious and even intimidating for parents. It's like this black box where, something is happening, but you're not quite sure what it is or why it's important.
I think that's a very common feeling.
Right.
But when you break it down, a student support team is really like a well-coordinated team.
Okay.
You've got the school psychologist, the social worker, teachers, of course, the parents,
Yeah.
and all of these people are working together to gather information and make the best decisions for the child.
So it's not just about giving a child a bunch of tests and calling it a day.
Right. It's a much more holistic approach that involves observations, interviews, reviewing the child's academic history, and yes, standardized testing too.
Okay.
And these assessments are really designed to kind of paint a clearer picture of the child's cognitive abilities.
And I know a lot of parents and maybe even some teachers get really intimidated by those IQ tests.
Yes, but they're not as scary as they seem. Think of those scores as a way to understand how a child's performance compares to their peers. So an IQ of 100 is average, for example, while a score above 130 would fall into the very superior range.
Okay.
And that's where it gets really interesting because sometimes you'll have a child who scores exceptionally high but is still struggling in school.
That's interesting.
And that could be a sign that their potential is being masked by something else.
Right.
Maybe a learning disability.
Yeah.
And these tests can help us uncover that.
So, those scores, which can seem so abstract, they become these really important clues for figuring out how to help a child succeed.
Exactly. Now, it's not just about IQ, right?
Right.
We also need to look at how those abilities translate into academic performance.
Which is where achievement testing comes in, and it helps determine if a child qualifies for special education based on how they measure up to their peers.
Right. And here's where it gets even more fascinating. You can have a child with average or even above average intelligence who still struggles because of how their brain processes information.
These are the processing problems we hear about.
Exactly. So a child might be really bright, but still have trouble learning because their brain is just wired differently.
Right.
And this is where executive functions come into play.
Okay.
They're like the air traffic control system of our brains. It's
Interesting.
helping us prioritize tasks, manage our time, control our impulses.
So if a child's executive functions aren't working smoothly, it doesn't matter how intelligent they are, they're going to have trouble learning.
Think of it this way. If the air traffic controllers are asleep on the job, you're going to have planes crashing, even if the pilots are the best in the world.
I like that analogy.
And the book goes on to describe different types of processing
Okay.
and how they can impact learning. So, for example, you've got auditory processing, visual processing, you've even got sensory processing.
Wow.
All of these can impact a child's ability to learn effectively.
So it's really a complex interplay of factors
It is.
that contribute to a child's learning profile.
It is.
And I can see why this assessment process is so important.
It is. And then all of that information gets compiled into a psychological report, which includes the types of tests used, what the results mean,
I see.
and recommendations.
This must be so helpful for parents and teachers to finally understand why a child might be struggling. It's like putting all the pieces of the puzzle together.
It is, but it's important to remember that it's just one piece of the puzzle. It's a starting point for a conversation about how to best support a child, not a definitive answer.
Right.
It's really all about understanding the whole child
Right.
and creating a plan that meets their individual needs.
So what happens next? We've identified the challenges. We have this report with recommendations.
Right.
Now what?
Well, now we move into, I think, the exciting part, which is exploring the interventions and support systems that can make all the difference for these kids.
Okay.
And this is where we start talking about things like response to intervention, or RTI.
Okay.
It's a multi-tiered framework
Okay.
that provides increasingly targeted support based on a child's needs.
Okay. Can you break down those tiers for us? I know people hear about RTI a lot, but I'm not sure everyone understands what it actually means.
Absolutely. Imagine a pyramid with 3 levels.
Okay.
Tier 1 is that broad base, and it's all about the universal supports that happen in a general education classroom.
Okay.
This might involve differentiated instruction, where the teacher's providing different levels of support
Got it.
within the same lesson to meet different learning styles.
Okay.
Then you have Tier 2, which kicks in when a student needs a little extra help. Think small group interventions with a reading specialist, for example.
Okay.
And finally, there's Tier 3, which is for those students who need the most intensive interventions.
Okay.
This might involve a completely individualized learning plan developed by a team of specialists.
So it's like this safety net that catches students early on before they fall too far behind.
Yes. And the beauty of RTI is that it's not just about remediation.
Right.
It's also about prevention.
I love that.
It helps us identify and address learning difficulties before they become major roadblocks.
Yeah, the book highlights some really great resources for
Yes.
parents and teachers who are navigating this process, like Intervention Central, the National Association of School Psychologists, the National Center on Response to Intervention.
Yes.
And these websites offer tons of research-based interventions and tools.
And what's even better is that many of these resources are freely available online.
That's great.
It really underscores the importance of accessibility and collaboration when it comes to supporting students with the diverse needs.
Absolutely.
But remember, interventions aren't just about academics.
Right.
We're also looking at ways to boost self-esteem, social competence, and social skills, which are so crucial for success in all areas of life.
Right. It's about developing the whole child, not just focusing on their academic performance.
Exactly.
And the book offers some really practical tips on how to do this right.
Absolutely. It talks about setting boundaries, creating clear rules, and using rewards and consequences effectively.
Okay.
And these strategies really empower both the children and the adults to create a positive and supportive learning environment.
I like that.
And don't forget the power of routines.
Oh, yes.
Establishing clear routines for homework, after school time, even bedtime can help children feel more secure and in control.
You know, that makes me think about those executive functions we talked about earlier.
Yes.
Routines provide that external structure that many children with learning differences need to thrive.
It's like providing scaffolding that helps them build their own internal organization over time.
That's a great way to put it.
Now, we've covered a lot of ground so far.
We have?
Understanding disabilities, the assessment process, interventions, the importance of things like routines and social skills.
Right.
But before we move on, I think it's really important to take a look at IEPs, 504 plans, and the legal framework that kind of shapes special education here in the U.S.
Good point. Because it's one thing to understand the different needs of learners,
Right.
but it's another thing entirely to know what rights those learners have and what supports are legally mandated.
Exactly.
So let's dive into that world next.
All right, so let's untangle this world of IEPs and 504 plans.
Right.
Think of an IEP or an individualized education program as a roadmap for a child's educational journey.
Okay.
It outlines very specific goals, services, and accommodations that are tailored to meet that student's unique needs.
So it's not a generic plan that's applied to every child with a certain disability.
Right,
It's really individualized,
exactly.
based on a deep understanding of that child's strengths and challenges.
Exactly. And these IEPs are legally binding documents, which means schools are obligated to provide the services outlined in the plan.
So that's important because it levels the playing field
It does.
and ensures that all students, regardless of their needs, have the opportunity to learn and succeed.
Right? It's all about ensuring that every child has access to a free, appropriate public education, or FAPE, as it's often called.
Right. And I imagine this could be a huge relief for parents who've been struggling to get their child the support they need.
Absolutely. And as students get closer to high school graduation, the IEP team starts thinking about what comes next.
Okay.
This could be college, vocational training, employment, or even independent living.
Right.
These are called transition services, and they're designed to prepare students for a successful transition into adulthood.
Yeah, that's a really crucial piece of the puzzle because it's not enough to just support students through their school years.
Right.
We need to equip them with the skills and resources they need to thrive as adults.
Exactly. And for those students who may not qualify for special education under IDEA, there's Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act.
Okay.
This provides accommodations for students with disabilities who need support to access the general education curriculum.
So a 504 plan might be used for a student with ADHD, diabetes, or even anxiety.
Exactly. Conditions that might not fall under the IDEA definition of a disability, but still require certain supports to ensure the student can fully participate in school.
Got it. And both IDEA and Section 504 stress the importance of collaboration between parents and teachers.
Yes.
It's about open communication, shared decision-making, and working together to support each child.
A successful IEP or 504 plan really hinges on that teamwork and shared understanding.
Yeah, you mentioned that, these legal frameworks are constantly evolving.
Right.
And I'm wondering how No Child Left Behind has impacted special education.
Right.
Because it seems like there's been a lot of debate about that.
There has. The book talks about how NCLE aligns with IDEA 2004 in terms of accountability, but it also acknowledges the controversy surrounding its implementation,
Okay.
especially when it comes to standardized testing.
Right?
Some argue that the emphasis on standardized testing has put undue pressure on students and schools, particularly those serving students with disabilities.
It's a complex issue for sure, but what's important for our listeners to understand is that these laws reflect an ongoing conversation about how to best serve students with diverse needs.
Right. It's a dynamic process.
It is.
And speaking of dynamic processes, we can't forget about school transitions.
Yes?
These are often overlooked milestones, like starting kindergarten or moving to middle school.
Right.
And they can be incredibly stressful for any child,
Yeah.
but even more so for those with learning differences.
I think a lot of us take for granted how challenging those transitions can be. We think about a child starting kindergarten and we picture excitement and new friends.
Right.
But for a child with sensory sensitivities or social anxieties, it can be an incredibly overwhelming experience.
Exactly. Research shows that these transitions can significantly impact a child's well-being, both academically and emotionally.
That makes sense.
And what's really fascinating is that research also highlights the crucial role teachers play in helping students navigate these changes. A caring and understanding teacher can make all the difference in the world.
That makes me think about how important it is for teachers to understand the individual needs of their students,
Yes,
not just academically, but emotionally and socially as well.
it is.
It's about creating a classroom environment that's welcoming and supportive for all learners.
That's a great point, and it brings us to a final thought I'd like to leave our listeners with. We've spent a lot of time talking about how individualized support can help students with identified needs thrive. But how can we take these principles of understanding, empathy, and flexibility and apply them to create a more inclusive and supportive learning environment for all children?
That's a powerful question, and it really gets to the heart of what inclusive education is all about.
It does.
It's about recognizing that every child, regardless of their strengths, challenges, or labels, deserves the opportunity to learn and grow in an environment that values and supports them.
And that brings us to those fascinating case studies.
Oh, yes.
These real-life examples from the book really bring these concepts to life and illustrate how this all plays out in the real world.
Okay, I'm ready to dive into those stories. Let's see how these ideas about individualized support, IEPs, and the power of teacher empathy translate into real-life scenarios. These case studies are fascinating. It's one thing to talk about these concepts in theory, but it's so powerful to see them play out in the lives of real children.
I agree, and what strikes me is how each case really highlights the individuality of each child's journey. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to special education,
Right.
and these stories really drive that point home.
Okay, so let's start with Mary. She's a fourth grader who's struggling with reading and writing.
Okay.
The book describes her as bright and eager to learn, but she's just not keeping up with her classmates, despite her best efforts.
Right.
I think a lot of our listeners can probably relate to this. Maybe they've seen this in their own children or even experienced it themselves.
Yeah.
It's that feeling of knowing you're capable, but something is just not clicking.
It is, and Mary's case really highlights the complexities of learning disabilities.
Right.
The book goes into detail about the assessment process that she went through.
Uh-huh.
And it turns out that even though she has average intelligence, she has some significant weaknesses in long-term retrieval and visual motor integration.
Okay, so what does that mean in practical terms? And what does it look like when a child struggles with those things?
Well, long-term retrieval is all about recalling information.
Okay,
It's that ability to pull facts and concepts from your memory bank when you need them.
got it.
And visual motor integration is that coordination between what you see and how you move your body,
Okay,
which is essential for things like writing and even playing sports.
okay.
So for Mary, those weaknesses can make reading and writing incredibly challenging. Imagine trying to write a story when you can't remember the words you want to use, or you struggle to physically form the letters on the page.
Right, it can be so frustrating.
It can be incredibly frustrating.
It sounds exhausting. No wonder she's falling behind. But the good news is that once these challenges are identified, there are specific strategies and interventions that can help, right?
Exactly. The book talks about using visual aids, mnemonic devices, and breaking down information into smaller chunks to help with long-term retrieval.
Okay,
And for those visual motor integration challenges, an occupational therapist can assess her fine motor skills and recommend specific exercises or adaptations to make writing more manageable.
it's all about removing those barriers and providing Mary with the tools and support she needs to succeed. And I love how this approach focuses on the child's strengths and individual needs rather than trying to fit them into some predetermined mold.
Absolutely. And it's not just about academics, it's about building confidence and self-esteem. When a child feels like they're finally being understood and supported, it can make a world of difference.
That's so true. Okay, let's move on to George. He's a second grader with autism who's having trouble completing his schoolwork.
Okay.
His teachers describe him as off-task, constantly fidgeting, staring into space, and talking to his classmates.
Right.
I think many teachers and parents have encountered a child like George, that student who just can't seem to sit still or focus on their work.
Yeah.
It can be so challenging to know how to best support them.
It can, and this case really highlights the importance of looking beyond the behavior and trying to understand what's driving it.
Right.
Remember how we talked about behavioral problems sometimes masking learning potential?
Yes.
This is a perfect example. So instead of just labeling George as disruptive, the book takes us through the process of conducting a functional behavioral assessment, or FBA.
Okay, so tell us, what did the FBA reveal about George's behavior?
Well, it turned out that George's off-task behavior increased when the teacher was busy with other students or writing on the blackboard.
Interesting.
This suggested that he might be seeking attention or trying to avoid challenging tasks.
That makes sense.
It completely changes how you approach the situation.
It does. Instead of just seeing a child who's misbehaving,
Right.
you start to see a child who's trying to communicate a need.
Exactly. And understanding the why behind the behavior is so crucial for developing effective interventions.
Right.
So in George's case, they developed a behavior intervention plan, or BIP. That included strategies like providing him with clear visual schedules, breaking down tasks into smaller steps, and offering frequent positive reinforcement for on-task behavior.
So it's about creating a predictable and supportive environment
Exactly.
that minimizes anxiety and helps him focus on learning. It's amazing how much of a difference these small adjustments can make.
It really is, and the book stresses the importance of consistency. Everyone involved in George's education,
Right.
teachers, parents, therapists, they all need to be on the same page, implementing the BIP consistently to ensure he's getting that consistent support.
So it's that teamwork approach again.
It is.
It's about everyone working together to create the best possible outcome for the child.
Precisely. These case studies and the many others in the book really illustrate how special education is about individualizing support, understanding each child's unique needs, and creating a framework that allows them to flourish. It's not about forcing square pegs into round holes. It's about celebrating the diversity of learners and providing them with the tools they need to succeed.
Yeah, these stories have been so enlightening. I think what resonates most with me is the importance of empathy and seeing each child as an individual. It's about understanding that behavior is communication, and that even the most challenging behaviors often stem from unmet needs.
I agree. This deep dive has really been all about exploring the complexities of special education, but I hope our listeners walk away with a deeper understanding of the human element at the heart of it all. It's about connection, compassion, and the belief that every child deserves the opportunity to reach their full potential.
Well said. And for our listeners who want to continue this journey of learning, we encourage you to check out The Complete Guide to Special Education by Linda Wilmshurst and Alan Brew. It's a treasure trove of information and resources. Keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep advocating for all learners, because when we create inclusive and supportive environments, everyone benefits.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
And until next time, keep exploring.